Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And I want to take this moment to really acknowledge the land and the land that I'm on and the land that Royal Roads rests upon, which was the home to the Kongan and the Quisepsum families for millennium. And they stewarded the land with a lot of respect and reciprocity. And so it's in that spirit that I also recognize just even the trees that are outside my home right now that are making the oxygen that I'm not doing. And so that sense of interdependence is really important to me, and to recognize that we here, even in this webinar, are interconnected. And so for those who want to take a second to just acknowledge whatever the land is, the ancestors, or what's brought you here today, and also to think about the people who are going to come after us and who can benefit from the learning that's going to take place right now, as well as if you do decide to enroll in the program, the learning that you're hoping to receive and engage with. So just to take that moment to acknowledge the lands and the people that have come before us and that come after us, and whatever responsibilities we feel in relation to that. And so I'll introduce myself now. I'm Dr. Marnie Jell, and I'm the program head for the Conflict Analysis and Management program. And I also instruct in the program. And so I'm responsible for the overall arc of the program. And we are also really lucky to have Selena Kunar, who's the education specialist, who will be hosting this, and she will be able to answer any questions that you have, as well as Diana Scott, who's an enrollment advisor. And these people are really your very good go-to people as you're starting to think about enrollment, admissions, costs, what the options might be, and to also get advice on your application. So this is really an opportunity for us all to learn together. And so I would really appreciate if just in the chat, if you feel like it, to say, what is it that's brought you here today? What are you hoping for? What are you thinking this might be interesting to have spent an hour of your time thinking about or wanting to attend? So please just put that in the chat, because that will help me actually tailor make this to the interests in the room and to have a much more engaged and reciprocal kind of conversation today, so that you don't have to be a passive consumer of information unless you want to. You can be an active engager in this webinar to the degree that you're comfortable. But the more that you engage, the more interesting it will be. Like everything, what you put into it is definitely what you'll get out of it. So back over to you, Selena.
Thanks so much, Marnie. We are so lucky to have you at the forefront of this program and all the conversations we have about this program. So I'm just going to take just a second to share how we're going to spend this hour today, but then we're going to head back over to Marnie to learn more about the program itself. So we have done some quick welcome and introductions, and I see the chat box on my end. I have some alerts here, and opening it up and seeing William, Paul,
It's great.
Robin.
So these are super helpful to guide me into the kind of content that might interest you. So keep up with the chats, because it's going to be a really interesting conversation as you continue to engage. So thank you, Selena, on that.
Absolutely. And then we're going to just go right into the CAM approach, using conflict to leverage change, which will allow us to talk a bit more about the program and the specifics of our program and how it came to be and what it aims to do. Of course, we'll cap off with sharing a smidge of information about our application as well as the requirements of our program, and then leave time for questions and conversations. But that said, as questions come up for you, pop them right into the chat box. We will have time at the end to engage in some deeper discussion, but we are all eager to answer questions as they come up for you as well. So with that, why don't we just get started, and I'll pass it right back over to you, Marnie.
Thank you. So it is a good question about why study conflict analysis and management? Why put 2 years of your life and your finances into this study? Well, as those of you who have been talking or thinking about this or putting your information into the chat, is about to think about how do we actually engage with conflict? It's all around us, and it's not only all around us, we're enacting conflict behavior, and so are others. So once we start thinking about conflict not as something abstract that exists out there, but as actually behaviors that people engage in, we immediately have a different pathway into how do we actually change people's behavior. and influence it, because obviously we can't change others, but we certainly have a lot of skills and approaches that can influence others. So if you were to go to one of the excellent training programs around mediation or negotiation, you would likely get a toolbox of skills. You just wouldn't have the time to go into the theory behind it. And that really is what matters and what we focus in your 2 years of study. And I'll tell you a little bit about the variety of pathways that you can take, but there's a core program of study around conflict with a specific focus on organizational conflict. And having said that, I see in the chat, there's some of you who are interested in mediation, some of you who are interested in more community-based, some of you who are interested in the phenomenon around social media and the polarizing effect of the kind of depersonalized conflict that emerges. And so once you have some of the deeper theory, then you can engage much more flexibly and with a lot more intention than if you were to simply go into a mediation program or a restorative justice program, like the specific certification and the skills. So this is not a certification program in terms of being able to be a certified mediator or a certified arbitrator. What this is you get a master's degree, which will help you with promotions or flex your career more, or enter into a different kind of career. And then it makes it that much easier to go and get the certification afterwards. So let's think about what is conflict. As I've already said, there's so many different understandings about what conflict is. If we think about war and violence, or if we think about passive aggression, or we think about trauma-informed practice, or we think about, this trolling. There's so many different understandings and manifestations of conflict behavior. And so if we dive even a little deeper into what it is we think we know about conflict, what our understanding is about conflict, really shapes how we intervene. And having this range of theory underneath our skills will help us do that more flexibly. So when we understand different ideas about how conflict arises, there are different theoretical approaches. And by theory, I just mean concepts or ideas. What are implicit, our inner sense of like, how did this conflict come about? That's what I mean by theory. Because once we sort of are explicit or we can talk about how the conflict comes about, then what to do about it becomes the next step. But often we start with what to do about it without really thinking more about what it is that started it in the first place. So many of you may be familiar with the very groundbreaking work, Getting to Yes, which was written by Fisher and Urey in 1981. So you can already see there's like this academic thing. We've got the citations going. So if you understand conflict to be about incompatible goals, it's different than Marshall Rosenberg, who wrote in 2003 that conflict is essentially about unmet needs. And then if you look at Melchin and Picard, who have written about the insight approach, they talk about conflict as a behavior, and it's a decision to defend against some kind of threat. So already you have different senses. Goals is something that's like, I want this in the future. A need is something that's already inside of people, or this decision to defend against some kind of perception or meaning making around threat. So you see, even those three understandings of what is conflict and why do people do it will really shape what it is that you do. So if you think that conflict is about incompatible goals, then you think, okay, I've got to try and understand what the underlying interests are. So I'm going to try and figure out about how do we make this into a win-win situation. And that'll be the kind of questions that I'm going to ask about is, what are you hoping to achieve by this? And you're hoping to achieve this, so maybe we can find a common ground. If you think that if you understand conflict to be about unmet needs, then your strategy is going to be, okay, how do I surface the needs for people to talk about those needs so then they can figure out ways of addressing those needs? So I'm going to ask questions about what was your need? What need are you trying to fill when you're engaging in that kind of conflict behavior? Or if you understand conflict as a decision to defend against threat, then you'd be asking, what were you concerned about might happen? And what made that kind of behavior the best decision? How did you react to the other person when they said this? And what did you want to protect? What were you trying to advance? There's different ways then of understanding how conflict arises and what to do about it. And those are the kinds of things that we develop right from the very beginning. What is conflict? How do you deal with it? How do others deal with it? How do you analyze it so that you can make a better intervention? This ultimately involves building conflict capacity. So I know in the chat already there are people who have been saying, I see conflict as an opportunity, or how do we wage conflict constructively? When we have only a conflict resolution model in our minds about conflict is something that we have to fix or change or stop, that actually really reduces this overall ability to hold the tension of conflict, to be able to advance to some kind of new possibility. And in particular, what's very important in this conflict program is that we also take the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission very seriously. How do we think much more seriously about the privileging and the centering of Western knowledge? How do we decolonize and think more deeply and integrate more deeply the resistance and the indigenous ways of knowing and thinking about conflict, about land, about rights, about history, about worldviews and relationship to the natural world, the more than human. So when we start thinking about conflict in those terms, sometimes conflict is the most conscientious action to take in the face of injustice. Sometimes in organizations, conflict is what needs to be done to change something that's fundamentally not right. So it's not about resolving, reducing, suppressing, or avoiding conflict. It's about leveraging conflict to facilitate change. But it's not generating necessarily destructive conflict, or there's an ability to hold the tension of discomfort in order to shift the way a system is working. And I'll talk about systems soon. When we've talked about what is our ideas about conflict, what we're going for, then there's the skills. And there's all kinds of different skills that need to be developed in order to use ourselves as agents of change. Ultimately, this program is about how do you become a change maker? How do you situate yourself within your organization to do the things that your organization was set up to do better? How do you get the job that you want so that you can actually make the difference that you're hoping to advance? How do you get the promotion that you need so that you have a different scope of influence? These are all kinds of questions that students come into, and they have different ways, different skills that they need to develop. So the kinds of students who come into our program are social workers, are teachers, nurses, Indigenous activists, police officers, real estate agents, mortgage brokers, funeral directors, probation officers, corrections. That's just to name a few like of the recent graduates that I'm thinking about. University student services, consultants, mediators, already practicing mediators. So there's just this wide range of interests in the program because conflict is everywhere. So that in order to do that, we work very specifically with the kinds of cases and the kinds of skills that people bring to the program, because as adult learners, we know that you're already skilled in so many areas and you're seeking to advance those skills and make them more intentional. And you work with others who all also have different skills, different interests, and that you're able to develop your own capacity to engage in conflict that may emerge within a team or within the classroom, or to more effectively get support for dealing with the conflicts that you engage with outside. So that we really do believe that we live our learning within the conflict program, that we see how we can use conflict even within the program to be able to advance the system to the next level, or more specific, more generally about how you can use the conflict within your families and your friend groups to be able to develop different patterns of interacting. So here's the different competencies that may develop those skills, the different activities that may develop skills, because we really understand that role is where we are situated in relation to others that can help us use that conflict to advance change. So if you're in a meeting, how do you situate yourself that you can influence some kind of change if you have a formal leadership position, or where you're taking on some kind of informal leadership position? I can also tell you from having worked in the federal public service for many years that questions about conflict capacity are always on job interviews. Employers recognize that an ability to deal constructively with conflict is one of the major conflict competencies for leadership and beyond. And so having a solid background in conflict has really helped our graduates advance to the next level of their degrees or their careers, or to shift into other areas. So you can use this program to develop, to change careers, or even to develop particular kinds of expertise through a thesis to be able to become expert and in a consulting type of area. So sometimes people use this program as a second stage in their career. They may be thinking about retiring, maybe they've been downsized and they want to advance into a different layer in their career. So where leaders are involved to be able to motivate and create and communicate and drive change, those things generate conflict. Change does generate conflict. And so Peter Senge said, but people don't resist change, they resist being changed. And if we're able to engage people within what is causing threat or what needs are not being met, they're much more likely to buy into the changes that are being imposed upon them, or that they can somehow find ways to influence. So this is where there's a lot of recognition that we all play some kind of leadership role within our specific context, whether it's within a family or an organization. Often there are CEOs in our in the CAM program who recognize that working at a senior level or working with boards and nonprofits, again, there's a significant amount of paralyzing conflict that takes place, and being able to develop the skills, they use them every day. And within the conflict program, from the first course, you can immediately start using the skills that you're talking about and thinking about. It's like you learn them one day and you're applying them the next. It's a very, very practical program. And we're really committed to having the balance between theory and practice, from practice to theory, from theory to practice, so that you're living this learning and you're able to apply it and practice it. So it's very, very significant, as Dawn just points out, in the business environment, where in the business of, there's continual conflict within family-run businesses, within large organizations, where there's pressure, which really reduces people's capacity to engage in conflict and increases the likelihood for that kind of conflict. So as I said, there's often people within different forms of business, within IT, as I said, real estate and mortgage, that there's as I'm thinking about the different kinds of businesses that people have been in, there's small businesses, contractors. So there's numerous kinds of business people that have found being able to engage more conscientiously with conflict can help with colleagues, with clients, with suppliers, and with the actual strategic planning itself, because there's often that interpersonal, and systemic dimensions of conflict. So here we go. When we're talking about how to leverage yourself within the system, you have your own way of approaching knowledge, you have your own way of approaching problems, and you're dealing with people. And people also have this way of being different from us. They have their own views, they have their own backgrounds, they have their own hopes, and that we're all connected within a system, whether it's only one-on-one, because we know that there's always people who are connected to us and are informing the way that we're thinking and acting, and we're dealing with others. So one thing that I think I'd invite you to also think about is, this is a very mechanical way of presenting systems. There's other ways of thinking about systems. And one of the benefits of being at Royal Roads as a student is across the university, we're very engaged with systems thinking, with understanding that that we ourselves are positioned within systems, and that systems are complex, they're emergent and nonlinear. And so how we influence one part of the system will affect other parts of the system, which is why I really do believe this conflict program is a significant way to influence a much wider change, because through you and through your influence on colleagues, you're able to have a much wider span of influence, and that ultimately can lead to other kinds of change that's much more significant. But how we think about conflict really, and how we think about systems, also influences the way that we act and enact our change-making behavior. So if we think about ourselves as machines, we might think more about this kind of very linear way or this two-dimensional way of thinking about systems. If we think about ourselves as part of an ecosystem, that's a very different way of understanding who we are in relation to others. If we see ourselves as mutually interdependent, as emergent, as growing and evolving, as changing, some things die, some things emerge. There's this complexity over time and space. There's also a differentiation. We're not all circles. Some of us are plants and others of us are different trees. If we think about that metaphor much more seriously as our as the Indigenous teachers, particularly my colleagues Harley Eagle, have taught me, then there's much more likelihood of 1, respect, 2, courage, and 3, integrity in the way that we engage with others. If we see them as living, thinking, feeling beings like us who are doing their best to advance what they think is significant and important. Very different way of thinking than if we're thinking about everybody as round circles that may be blue or red. So the capacity to think with complexity is a key part of this program. So why study this CAM program? That you've already showed up and that you're watching this is a really significant thing to pay attention to. There's something that you have recognized already, that there's something about conflict that really drags you down. And there's also something about conflict that if you can really understand it, it can really advance some significant change, because people don't fight about what doesn't matter. There's something at stake within a conflict, and being able to understand more deeply what it is that matters to people and why they're fighting about it or avoiding it or fawning over it, because conflict shows up in different ways. Sometimes it is that fight behavior, but sometimes it's avoidance. Sometimes people respond to threat or try to meet their needs by avoiding. And when we start seeing avoidance as a kind of conflict behavior, it again enables you to leverage something rather than, why are people not showing up? How do I get them to show up? It's, how do I understand what they're avoiding and how do I work with that avoidance in order to help them engage? Very different set of questions. So to come back to understanding the complexity of conflict behavior is why people often show up to webinars like this. They have some kind of experience. So one of the things I love about Royal Roads is that there's a flexible admission process. So we recognize that career learning is important, life learning is important, Indigenous ways of knowing are important, and that they may not be accompanied with degrees. And we also recognize that this is within a Western institution. There's a degree conferring aspect to it that gives you some kind of credibility within the wider system to be able to demonstrate some expertise. So we try and walk this line so that we have personal or professional experience related to conflict. So if you have already have an undergraduate degree, that is excellent. That you have a standard admissions pathway. And so we can talk more about that. And if you have professional expertise or a blend, we really do take a look at you as an individual, what you can contribute to the program and what you might get out of it. Maybe it's worth then taking another year and doing something else, or maybe you can come right in and begin to contribute. So there's generally a social science background, but we welcome students from all kinds of backgrounds. Scientists, geologists, there's often foresters who come to our program because they understand systems thinking and they can see how conflict around resource management is an important skill to develop. So natural sciences background are also really welcome. That there's an openness, that you recognize the importance of diversity, you are willing to contribute to it, you're willing to recognize your own position within it, your own diversity, and you're working towards yourself within your systems and within others. So there's a degree of reflection as well as the skills about interpersonal and systemic skills that people come in with and that they develop more. And resilience, because this is a hard program. Doing a master's degree is hard. Conflict is hard. You need stamina to be able to engage with it. You need some fortitude. You need to have some emotional intelligence. Those are things that really are part of resilience, and they get cultivated more, but there's a background that people have that they stick with it and they get it done. So after you have theory and practice, so you're critically informed, you're able to analyze and engage with conflict, you get extensive feedback from your instructors as well as from your peer colleague learners. You have way bigger capacity about being able to recognize what your what activates you in a negative or in a, you know, triggered way. You have a sense of being how to engage with others, to be able to wonder about, oh, you seem to be reacting in a way that seems a little disproportional to what the situation is. What's going on for you? How do I wonder about you in your own terms? Of course, we would never say like that's a disproportionate reaction, but you're able to be curious about that. So you're asking the kind of questions of what are you worried about that might happen? What are you going for when you're asking me that kind of question? You're able to be much more resilient in your interpersonal interactions. And then you're able to think how yours and other people's actions are influenced by the system and how there may be opportunities to change the system so that different patterns of interaction can result. And networked. You develop lifelong connections with your student cohort and colleagues because you've worked together, you have studied together, you've gone through stress together, and you have come out the other side changed. You're different people than when you came in. And I can say that without hesitation, that people who go through the conflict program end up with just much more capacity as human beings as well as professionals. And that your roles and identities become much more clear, and people become much more able to position themselves within their relationships with others. That makes them more grounded, more curious, and more influential and confident. I can say that thinking of numerous people who would be happy to tell you that. So if you do have other questions about if you want to talk to an alumni, that's something that we're happy to set up for you as well. So I'll tell you a little bit about the program structure, and then we can go over to talking a bit more about some of the details. So for the master's program, it's 2 years long. It's online, except we have two-week residencies. And because there's a this learning intensive, it means you come to campus, you stay on campus or nearby for 2 weeks, and it's like a learning retreat, basically. And that's 36 credits. The graduate diploma is 1 year long, so it's the same core program. So whether you're doing the graduate diploma or the Masters of Arts, you're in the same group for that year. The graduate diploma people take an off-ramp at that time, and the Masters of Arts people keep going. And you can do a coursework, which means you take 3 courses. You can do an internship, which means that you do some professional learning in a different context, or you can do a thesis, which means that you dive more deeply with a supervisor into a specific area of interest. So the only difference between the graduate diploma and the master's is the graduate diploma is 1 year, you go off and do the exit, and the master's is you continue on. If you enroll for the graduate diploma and you decide you want to stay on, you're welcome to apply for the master's. It's just an administrative thing. If you're taking the master's and you find your life has changed, you can also exit after that year with the graduate diploma. So thank you, Diana, for putting those things in. So I've talked a little bit about the competencies, and it's really worth reinforcing, in particular because we are very committed to the learning, teaching, and research model at Royal Roads. Unlike a lot of universities, we have a very explicit pedagogical approach. We have a commitment to authentic problem-based adult learning. We have a commitment to cohort-based learning. So you will be working in teams. And for the people who love teams, it's great. For the people who also don't like working in teams, those are very useful people to have in a program like this, because there's all kinds of people it takes to be able to engage in teamwork. And the gem of this program is that there's actually team coaches who are there to support you in working with teams. We don't put you in a team and then say, go off and good luck. You actually have a professional, extremely skilled, accredited conflict person who's also the team coach. And that person supports you in your teamwork. So there's generally one team assignment for every course, and the rest is individual. So there's never more than 25% of your mark that's on a team, but the team-based learning is really where a great deal of interpersonal learning and systemic learning takes place. So awareness, curiosity, critical thinking, the ability to examine a problem or a conflict from all sides, the creativity to think about other options of how this problem could be addressed, communication, which is oral and written, And I want to say that there's also often a great deal of flexibility around how to present assignments. Sometimes it's digital with storytelling, with a deep respect, again, for Indigenous ways of telling stories and other traditions. And the emphasis of, given that this is a Western institution, the ability to communicate with academic writing, with the APA, which is the way of citing and acknowledging the sources of where we got our information, is also a really important skill. And again, we have this like amazing writing center that can help you with communicating your ideas. So if you have not been in university for a long time, no problem. We do require that you take an academic writing and critical thinking course beforehand, which costs some money, but it is a super good investment in your academic life, as well as just in your overall life, about how to critically engage with research or literature and put that into an academic text. So there's this always ability of being student-centered and supportive is really the orientation that we take at Royal Roads. And then this collaboration about working with people, some of them whom you like, some of them will annoy you, and you get to figure out, how do I recognize what's getting activated in me and engage with this annoying person in a much more authentic way. And that's what conflict behavior is. That's how we develop our capacity in conflict, is doing it again, making a mistake, trying again, and doing it a little bit better next time, myself included. On to the next slide. So here we have Heidi, who's in a uniform, and there's often uniformed people, and there's often people who have had bad experiences with uniformed people. This is the complexity and the ability to engage authentically with the reality of the Canadian context now. And so we take that quite seriously, about recognizing that the students in the classroom have varying experiences and varying histories, and that those are rich and respected from whatever position that you come from and whatever identity that you have. So for Heidi, she was able to think critically when entering an organization and ask the questions, recognizing her own bias and being able to engage much more effectively. Talked a little bit already about the guides and support. So we have this awesome learning, teaching, and research model, which you can read, and we are accountable to it. We have learning outcomes that we're accountable, so that you can see, what is it that I'm paying for? What am I going to learn in your in all of your courses? You see how the activities line up with those learning outcomes. The instructors are all scholar practitioners. And so what that means is that they've had experience as practitioners as well as academically. And so they're there to guide you with some real life experience as well as the theory. There's the program staff, and so there's the administrators. And so right now I'm an academic staff, I'm an academic person, I'm a faculty, and then Selena and Diana are the staff. And they won't be the staff throughout the program, but we have this way of really trying to work between the administrative and the academic, so that if you need particular accommodations, if there's learning differences that really advance you in your ability to problem solve, but make it really hard for you to read, if you're dealing with that gift of dyslexia, again, you're welcome. You can have accommodations, and there's ways that we work to your strengths to the best that we can. And we also sometimes target your weaknesses so that we can help you develop those. So there's always staff involved as well, and so that they're people that you can turn to. There's your cohort, your peers. There's the team coaching, who I've already talked about, who are just like best in class. The academic coaching, so that's one-on-one coaching if you're finding yourself a little overwhelmed with getting assignments done, or there's personal challenges that have come up. And the writing center I've spoken about, as well as financial aid for bursaries, as well as for scholarships. And so if you are thinking more seriously about it, you can connect with Diana about where the financial aid is. And I know that she's already put some things into the chat for you. And then alumni. So I've already offered that you can connect with alumni, but they often, the people who come to our program are through word of mouth, because our alumni are very, very satisfied with our program. We stay in touch with our alumni to the degree possible, and it's been very, very inspiring to see how many different ways people have used this program to make significant difference in their worlds. So I think we are coming to the end of this conversation. There's my references. So that's how you know that I have got some, like the PhD, because there's the references. Oh yeah, so this is important. Are you ready for this graduate program? So the main thing is you need to have like a lot of practical preparation. Work has to be somewhat supportive. your family also has to be aware that they're going to see less of you. You're basically taking on kind of a part-time job when you're doing an academic program. And if you think about it as kind of a part-time job, that means some evenings and weekends where you're not going to be available, or you've put the kids to bed and you're now sitting down to do your work. Or your friends say, oh, we haven't seen you for a while. And you say, yeah, I've been reading some really interesting theory. Do you want to talk about that? So that's kind of your life. We recommend that people don't do big changes while they're doing their 2-year program. And having said that, people get married, people have children, and they work around it. So there's recognition about life circumstances, and there's a deadline, and so that has to be met. So I've talked about the personal readiness, and that practical preparation is not to be underestimated. Into the next slide. So Selena, would you like to take over the how to apply?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marnie. We gave you a short amount of time to talk about CAM and conflict, and I just a big thank you for taking the time to speak with us about all that today, and all the space you have to continue the conversation after this webinar as well. As we can see on this slide, I'm going to take just a few minutes to talk about the admission criteria for this program, as well as some tips and tricks for if you're looking towards applying. So to kick us off, I'll talk about standard admissions. So as Marnie had mentioned, standard admissions is where we look for our prospective students to be coming into this program and having a 4-year or comparable undergraduate degree from a recognized post-secondary institution with a minimum GPA of a B+. You'll see that we've noted relevant and related field for the types of degrees that we're looking for. And that's because, as Marnie mentioned, we have folks coming from a variety of backgrounds into this program. And what's important to us is to hear, why do you think your background is relevant and related? How is it relevant and related? So you'll see the little asterisks on that slide there, where relevant and related fields are defined by each program based on disciplinarity and professional practices, and our applicants are required to address how they consider their academic education to be relevant and related within their personal statement, which we'll talk about in a second. Again, as Marnie mentioned, we have this second pathway here at Railroads called flexible admissions. So again, for those folks who may not have a traditional academic background when looking towards graduate education, but folks who have extensive professional, personal, lived experience in the field and within the world of conflict. So flexible admissions is a few different ways you can join us in the program. So for example, if you have a degree, but you don't meet that B+ GPA, we're going to look for you to have a minimum of 5 years of relevant professional experience. Folks who are going to join us with no undergraduate degree will normally require 10 years of work experience with a minimum of 2 years of relevant professional experience in a leadership or management position, or a combination of education and experience. And again, we have our asterisks on many points within those bullets, and that's because, again, whenever we mention words like relevant or related, that's where we're eager to chat with you about how is your experience relevant and related to what you know of this program. You'll see the double asterisks there behind leadership or management. And that's because if you were to head to our website, you'd see a very comprehensive, holistic view of what management or leadership experience could entail. So for example, that could look like positions of positional leadership, so manager, director, but that could also look at things like a holistic career progression, roles that demonstrate competencies and responsibilities around supervisory functions, signing responsibilities, contributions to organizational change, or implementation of organizational values and mission. So take a look at our website, because this is where folks can get tripped up sometime. They go, oh, leadership or management experience. More often than not, here at Railroads, when you take a look at what that means to us, if you find yourself here in this webinar, as Marnie said, you're likely checking that box already. And as Marnie mentioned again, we encourage and then require all of our flexible admission applicants to complete academic writing and critical thinking here at our university before starting their program and obtaining a B+ in that program. This course is well loved on our campus, with many, many of our graduate programs having this requirement for its flexible admission folks, um, and a program that's taken by many folks who join us through standard admissions as well. Because what this course allows you to do is it allows you to fine tune those skills around critical thinking, academic writing, citing. What is APA citation? How would I structure this essay? So to to fine tune those types of skills so that once you start the program, you're not focused on necessarily how am I communicating these ideas, but you are focusing on the ideas themselves because you have the framework to be able to dive into your learning, dive into the topics you're exploring at the same skill level as the rest of your cohort. So again, flexible admission folks are required to take that course, but many standard admission folks, especially those who are perhaps a few years away from their last formal academic experience, also enjoy taking that. So we do offer it once a month, but some months even more than that. So if you have any questions, you can always connect. That's also important for me to note that flexible admissions is something we assess on a case by case basis. So if as I was speaking, you thought, okay, maybe standard admissions isn't for me, but flexible admissions might be, connect with our offices. Folks like Diana and her team are here to get to know you better and help you understand, is this program right for you? Are you right for this program? And to also unpack any other programs we have on our campus as well. So don't self select out, but be excited to have a conversation with folks who are just so excited to know you and honor all of the experiences you've had to date. Looking towards applying, as with most things these days, it kicks off with an online application. And currently, that online application includes a fee of $131.39. And once that online application is in, we then look for your supporting documents. So those things like your official transcripts, your personal statement, 2 letters of reference, and a structured resume. Our website is a wonderful resource to utilize when you're putting together these documents. Because, for example, for things like your personal statement, it'll have some guiding questions for you to understand, what should I be exploring within my statement? When you're looking to put together your resume, we have some helpful categories we ask that you include in this resume to ensure we get to know you a little bit better. Then we have some practical information as well as, how long should these documents be? How do our referees get our letters to your offices? How do transcripts remain official? All that kind of stuff can be found on our website, but also with Diana and her enrollment team as well. So after talking all about the program and how to apply for the program, it is important that we talk about when the program begins. Well, we are so excited to be moving toward our January 2023 intake, which means that our application deadline is set as August 31st, 2022. So that means if you're interested in beginning this program with us January 9th, 2023, make sure your online application is in before August 31st. Bonus points for getting your supporting documents in as well, because here at Rural Roads, we accept applications on a rolling basis. So that means we're not actually going to wait until August 31st to take a look at all the different packages that can come in. Instead, once your online application is in and we get your supporting documents, we're able to adjudicate your file and let you know about your seat in the program. This is important to know for programs like this that intake once a year. So if you're interested in beginning with us in 2023, we highly encourage you to get your online application in, because that signals to us that you're interested in obtaining a seat in the program. And then when those supporting documents come in, we let you know about how we can go about that together. if you're looking for a bit further in the future, we do have our 2024 deadlines posted as well. So if you're looking at beginning with us in January 8th of 2024, your application deadline should be August 31st of 2023. And if you have any questions about those dates there, you can always connect with our offices. And I've been saying the words our offices, our teams many, many times. And this slide just is a quick snapshot of just some of those teams and some of those offices we have here on campus to support you as a prospective student, current student, alumni. So just some of those teams include student engagement, Indigenous and international student services. We have a rec center here on campus, our career and learning development teams, counseling services, financial aid and awards, our team coaches, as well as our accessibility services teams. Leading up to this webinar, we got some beautiful questions around financial aid. And as we should, financial planning is a critical component of bringing your dreams to life and joining us in this program. So you right away wanted to make sure you had the website and direct phone lines of these teams. The financial aid and awards specialists, they have their fingertips on resources available both internally here at Railroads, but externally as well. So we highly encourage all of our students connect with this team because you never know what awards, bursaries, scholarships might be available to you. And then, of course, if you have any questions about loans or any other types of funding, these people are the ones who can help you figure that out. And this slide shows you some other helpful people who can help you figure out if this program is for you, how you can go about applying and supporting any questions you have all the way through to being admitted as a current student. So Diana is just one beautiful example of our enrollment team that are here to answer any questions about this program or any others on our campus. And you can connect with her and her team at learn.more@railroads.ca. And if you're joining us as an international citizen or temporary resident, Diana's counterparts in our international enrollment team are more than happy to continue the conversation at learn.more.international@railroads.ca. And if you have your phone handy, you can always swipe over this barcode and get connected with them directly via WhatsApp. So with that, we have come to a close on our formal slide deck for today, but I can see my chat box is alive. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen. So you may see some changes on your end, and I'm going to open up that chat box to see if we can engage in any Q&A together.
So Selena, I've been responding to the chat as it's been coming up, so that's all been taken care of. So if there are any other kind of questions or engagement, you're welcome to put that in the chat. And otherwise, we will kind of end early. And I've put my email into the chat. So if if you have interest in talking more about the content or the academic part of it or what alumni have done, please feel free to get in touch with me. And then for the technical things about the application process or the requirements or the adjudication, then you already know who to get in touch with.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marnie. Well, while any final questions are being typed into the chat box, maybe I'll just pop into the chat box quick and share a few questions that have been asked and the answers you've so kindly provided. So we had one really wonderful question around if you enroll in the diploma program and decide to transfer into the master's, are you guaranteed admissions into the master's with the cohort you've been working alongside? And Marnie said, yes. I myself am a learner here at Railroads. I actually have my convocation on Friday, and I am one of those folks. I wanted to just dip my toes. So I began with our graduate diploma and fell in love with the learning, fell in love with my cohort, and chose to just continue right on. So it's a very seamless experience to keep on keeping on if you find it's a good fit for you. Don asked a question around, is there an outline of course criteria available anywhere? And Marnie shared a link to check out all the different courses that you can explore through this program. Diana, oh, has been sharing links to everything we've been talking about today, but shared a link that I'll be sure to include in our follow-up around how you can book a phone or Zoom appointment with her team to chat more. And Dawn, oh, is an RIU alumni. Oh, how exciting. And knows that this course is unique, so wants to explore the content. So Dawn will investigate the link. That's awesome, Dawn. Thanks so much for joining us once again. So Marnie has shared also that, so in the 2-year program, our courses are generally 9 weeks long with a 2-year break in between. So for any folks who are wondering, what does a day in the life look like, or a week in the life? That is what it looks like, 9-week courses with a 2-week break in between. So with that, we have come to a close on our questions as well. Marnie, was there anything else you'd like to share before we close out today?
No, I just say thank you, and that the recognition of like how, as people, you're dealing with conflict and seeing it around you, and just to encourage you to keep exploring in whatever choice you make within whatever field, because the world certainly needs more of us to be able to deal with conflict and change more constructively. So I'm really glad that you even thought to come, and to just wish you well in the next phases of your journey, whatever it might be.
It's amazing, Marnie. Thank you so much. We had one question squeak in at the perfect time, asking around what time of year are the on-campus residencies?
So Robin, I can answer that. So April is first year residency, and it's often towards the end of April. And then the second year residency is towards the end of March. So it's always in spring, which is a great time to be here in Victoria. There is a lot of talk about like how beautiful the campus is and how nice it is for learning and having the place-based learning. And we also recognize that a lot of it is online, which is there's some pros and cons to the online learning, but it is a really nice place to come for a learning retreat to have those 2 weeks in spring.
Oh, absolutely. People get here and think, oh, this is where I get to spend 2 weeks. Of course, this is a virtual background, but we're very lucky being based in Victoria, which is relatively mild. We do have very beautiful views of our campus most year round. So if you're ever in the area, let us know. We'd be more than happy to give you a tour around. So with that, we wish you all a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending where in the world you've joined us today or when you're watching this recording. And just share that just because our session has come to a close today, the opportunity to connect has not. And we really look forward to the opportunity to keep connecting with you as you consider this program and Royal Roads University. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye-bye.